Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You are here with me, I'm your host, Rosie Gill-Moss, and I'm quite excited to be bringing you a bloke today. Hello, Geraint. Oh, how many times did I practice that? I'm so sorry. Hello, Geraint, and welcome to WAF. As I mentioned there, it's primarily we speak to women on here. I don't know whether that's because women are, I'm not going to say better, but more open to talking, or perhaps men die younger. I don't know. But I'm very grateful to have you here because it is a different perspective being widowed as a man, and it is particularly difficult or different when you've got children, which you do. Like I'm telling you, like you didn't know that. So I'm really hoping that this conversation will encourage other men to talk and kind of share a little bit. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I'll just tell the listeners a little bit about your story, if I may. Your wife was called Rosie, so she obviously was a wonderful woman, because how could she not be?
Of course.
Don't meet many Rosies, actually. And now Rosie, she had a 10-year, I'm going to call it a journey with cancer. I don't like to call it a battle, but you use obviously whatever you like. And you have 2 small boys. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of questions I'm going to have for you. But I think in the first instance, we'll stick with tradition, and I'll get you to tell me a little bit about Rosie, who she was, how you met, and a little bit about your life leading up to her cancer diagnosis. When you're ready, you just take the floor.
Great, thank you. Hi, thanks for having me on. I met Rosie in 1997, so a really long time ago. I was 19 at the time. We met through a mutual friend. Right before I was due to start university, we both were then at university in Cardiff.
And were you planning to both go to Cardiff? Sorry, I'll put my teeth back in. Were you planning to go to?
Yeah, so I already had a place there. She just finished her first year and met a friend of mine who had gone to university the same year as her. She visited my friend Joe that summer in Swansea when I had Mumbles, who went out to nightclubs as 19-year-old, 20-year-olds do.
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, vaguely remember. And we had a great night. We got on really well, and it was a good night. And then our paths just kind of kept crossing. We had some mutual friends, and it was kind of over a year of just bumping into each other in various nightclubs around Cardiff. Students.
See, that's how we used to form relationships back in the 90s, right? There's none of this Tinder business.
No, exactly. Yeah, and then so we got to. I went through my first year. She finished her second year. I went home for the summer. That summer, then my father then was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia that summer.
Gosh.
So I lost my dad that summer, and then towards the end of that summer, I went back to university in September, and then we eventually got together in October of that year, which would have been 1998. So
your dad was diagnosed and died within that summer when you were home from university. I'm
really
so sorry.
Time, yeah. And gosh, I think that's impacted me in how loss of Rosie is. I didn't process my dad dying at all. I just went back to university, got on with it. Probably
beer.
Beer. Yeah, exactly. Went fully into the student life, and just shut it out of my mind. And I never really went back to it until quite recently.
It's interesting you say that, because quite a lot of people I speak to, and myself as well, being widowed, especially if you do go into therapy or trying to figure out your trauma, it often does open up a lot of stuff that you didn't even know was in there. And I mean, as a student, I would have done the same thing. I'd have run full pelt at the bar and tried to escape
it brings,
everything.
I drew a lot of similarity. Even though Rosie's cancer was very different, it brought back a lot of memories. In the aftermath of when Rosie died, periods of time, I just kind of thinking, oh my gosh, it's the same. You're seeing the same things, the same kind of getting to the same kind. She some of the stuff that she went through, her visual appearance, it just brought back those memories of him from 20 odd years ago. 20 plus years. So, so we carried on at university. Rosie finished uni in 1999. I've written some notes down. I keep looking. Rubbish with dates. I've got like
I've got your application here, and I'm making notes.
Timeline. I thought it's probably different as well. And then, so she finished university. She stayed on in Cardiff for a bit while I was still there. Then she eventually moved back to Dorset, which is where I am.
I was going to say that's where you are now, isn't it?
Yeah. I finished university. I went home back to Mumbles, where my mum was living. And then we kind of carried on long distance for a bit. She moved to Wales for a bit, and then she couldn't find a job because it's slightly more difficult if you're not Welsh and you're living in Wales. She kind of gave up on that and moved back to Dorset. And then I followed her down in around 2001. And I've been here ever since.
Because there's no hint of a Welsh accent. I was expecting you to be quite Welsh when you think it's a name.
Yeah, I never really had a super strong. It gets stronger when I've been drinking.
Well, my dead husband Ben, he was born in Manchester but raised in North Wales. So he didn't have it. He had a sort of like that kind of border accent with the North Wales. Yeah. He's a bit of an accent, but it wasn't Welsh. But yeah, I digress. Anyway, sorry, do carry on. So you're both living in Dorset now.
Lived in Dorset, yeah, and then we kind of did those things that young people do when they're living together. We bought a house. We got married in 2003. I was 24 then, which is really young. And then we had a period of time of just us living our kind of lives. We hadn't really planned on having children. We both kind of thought we didn't necessarily want to go down that road. And then see things change, and we changed our minds. And in 2010, we had my eldest boy, Walt, was born.
My son was in 2010, so
okay, yeah, 14,
we've got a similar age one. Yeah, 14. Yeah.
So, and it wasn't long after Walt was born that Rosie found her first lump on her breast. And that would have been 2012, so Walt was 2. And then we then began a period of treatment. She had, I think it was a 36 millimeter tumor, which then she went through chemotherapy. Then through chemotherapy, radio surgery. And she took a really kind of positive attitude to it. And, I think you can look at it in different ways, can't you? You can see, oh my God, this is the end of the world. And she kind of saw it as this, it's a year, I'm going to have a year of treatment and then I'm going to be okay. And that's the attitude she took to it. And it was, a really great way to look at it all. And that's kind of what it was.
And breast cancer, although the word cancer is absolutely terrifying, the recovery rates of breast cancer caught early are quite good, aren't they? Exactly. You're not looking at a pancreatic. So, and she's young, she's fit, presumably.
She was 34, healthy, young. She had the odds were essentially in her favor. I guess. It was, and it kind of did pan out that way. That's how it played out. We had a year, really a 2-year-old. She chemo obviously is super tough, but she coped with it.
And how did you manage that with a 2-year-old? Did you have family support? Did you have to take time off work? I'm being a nosy bugger here, really.
No. We just kind of managed.
Yeah.
Excuse me. My employer I've worked at the same place, with the same people for a long time, and they were great through that, and they've been great for the whole thing, really. I kind of took time and was juggling. We had a few people helping out.
You just manage, don't you?
You just manage.
You look back and think, how on earth did I do that? But you just do.
Yeah, exactly. You just deal with it, and we did.
So was Rosie given an all clear? Because this particular bout of cancer didn't kill her, did it? This one.
No. She went. She was given.
Sorry, I'm going to let you talk.
I guess the all clear. I suppose you never are all clear because you're still under the monitoring, and you go in for checks, and you're on tamoxifen, you're on medication, you know, and it kind of continues. So I think people say all clear or whatever. You're always kind of a bit, with hindsight and with experience, you kind of think, maybe it's not. But
Yes.
to a degree, you know, she was then got herself back to being healthy, you know, she was in the gym, she was working out, she was eating healthily, and I think everything was okay, everything was good. Before she had her first diagnosis, we were in the process of kind of trying for another baby. Obviously, cancer just kind of scrapped those ideas. They kind of, because they found the lump and it was fairly large, they just blasted straight into treatment without any real discussions about the future and your fertility and all that kind of stuff. And so a few years later, you know, she's healthy, she's in a good place. We kind of revisited that idea, but obviously things were slightly more complicated. You know, chemotherapy and radiotherapy just annihilated her fertility quickly. So we, and tamoxifen as well, you're not allowed to get pregnant when you're on tamoxifen. So we explored the options. And, you know, Rose was always she was quite a private person. And when she was going through a period of treatment where she had cancer, she didn't really want people to know that she had cancer. Because, and I think she was right, because it changes people's perceptions and it changes the way people talk to you. You know, you get that kind of, how are you doing? That
Head
kind
tilt.
of thing. Yeah, exactly. And she just didn't want that. So, at one point she started looking at adoption, and she spoke to, you know, made some inquiries, but she had a phone call with, she had a phone call from an adoption agency or someone. And I think the first thing this person said to her was, how are you? It's just, you know, a few years past treatment. And she was just, I think she ended the phone call, and I think she said to me something like, oh, God, mate. I was like, it's just not going to happen. So,
yeah. And I'm thinking the hoops that you have to jump through for adoption as well. Ian.
Yeah.
So did you manage to, because your second child,
Yeah,
Rex,
we
I love the
did.
name Rex, by the way, I really like that name.
So what she spoke to her oncologist, got a consultation at Royal Marsden. We spoke to somebody up there, and the consultant we spoke to at Marsden basically said, he said the concern was that because she'd been diagnosed 2 years after having Walt, and it was obviously hormone based, you know, is there a link? And he kind of said, well, no, we haven't got any evidence to say that there is a link. You should be fine. If you want to have a baby, come off tamoxifen, have a baby, and go back on it. He said, do it as quickly as you can. You know, the longer you're off the tamoxifen, the greater the risk of a recurrence. The tamoxifen is there for, you're taking it for a reason. So that's what we did. We set ourselves a timeline, a window to
Schedule
for her to get pregnant. And ultimately, if she didn't get pregnant in that period of time, we would then look at IVF. She didn't get pregnant, so we then did IVF. We had one go at IVF, but you know, we had enough money to do one go. Found someone who had come highly recommended, found this guy who, and it worked. You know, that's not an easy thing to go through.
No, it's not.
All the drugs and, you know, the injections, and you're keeping drugs in the fridge, and
the risk of disappointment as well.
Yeah,
you're putting yourselves right out, because you're really saying, we want this baby, and we got one roll of the dice. Well, I'm very glad you did.
Yeah, and then so Rex was born in 2016. He is completely different to Walt.
Yeah, they do that, don't they? You think you've got one sussed.
Yeah, you've got one nice, quiet, chill, you know, gentle soul.
It's your 14-year-old, a very chilled one as well. I've got one. People don't believe me.
And then Rosie described Rex as her wild one. That's the
Yes,
word
the
she used.
wildling. Hector was my.
Yeah.
Well, he's 11. He was my wildling, and then Tabby, who's 6, was the tiny tornado. I have a picture of she
Okay.
emptied a beanbag, put on an Elsa dress, and did a snow angel in it on the kitchen floor. I'm dealing with like absolute criminals in my house, I tell you.
Yeah.
But yes, you're
Sounds
right. You
quite
can have 2
familiar.
children, same parents, same household, different beasts. I think nature's designed to test us.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, sorry, I'm just for my own sort of timeline. So at this point, there's no mention of a recurrence. And this is, sorry, I'm just checking my time. So this is 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, so
2016.
now I'm looking at my notes and I know when the next diagnosis came in, but I'm
Yeah.
going to let you tell the listeners here.
So so Rosie had Rex in 2016. He was born beginning of June, so he's just had his birthday. He's just turned 8. And then
Birthday.
2017, she really found another lump. So she obviously, I can't quite remember if she found herself or it was through one of the routine checks they do. They put that down to a localized recurrence. Essentially, a few cells left from floating around from the previous diagnosis. So she'd already had chemotherapy. They decided they weren't going to do it again. There's no real need. So it was just surgery. That's all they did. They operated. They removed the lump, and again, she took a really positive attitude to it. It was, that's how she saw it. It was a lump. It's a blip. It's a bump in the road. We'll deal with it. We've got a 1-year-old, but we'll deal with it, and we did, and we get through it. And then after that, because she'd been through multiple surgeries at that point, her kind of self-esteem just plummeted. So then she started to investigate kind of options for reconstruction and all this kind of stuff, which she did, and it did what she hoped. It boosted her confidence and kind of got back on track, and everything was good. We had 2 kids. We'd moved house. Everything was
Knackered.
fine. It was kind of, yeah, but things are okay. Things are good.
And you've got that little now. I can sort of, I don't know you, and I didn't know Rosie, but you can almost imagine. Okay, we've got the 2 kids. It's been challenging. We've got that with here. We've seen off 2 attacks from the big C. Right. Okay. Universe. Let's give us a break now. We're going to just enjoy this life that we've created. And did you get much chance to do that? Because I know
we did. Yeah, we did. Yes, yeah, we did. We had, we did loads of stuff. Rosie was really, she's quite earthy, maybe. That's the right word. She loved outdoors.
Did she like yoga?
No, she wasn't into yoga.
Oh.
No. Wasn't into yoga.
Should have got there.
She hated park run as well. I don't know what that's
I keep saying I'm going to take the kids to park on the park. That was nearly a bad word. Park run. There's one like 5-minute walk from my house, and it's only the mile one because it's for kids. I can't even get them. I can't even bother with that.
Yeah,
I do like yoga.
But we'd always be out in all weathers, walking the dogs and pond dipping. I've got photos of in the horrendous weather, with the nuts of mank that you pull out of the pond. Just loved her. So we're always doing that kind of stuff, and it was everything were good. Things were happy. Everything was fine.
I'm projecting a little bit, but do you think that you were kind of aware that this was really precious because of the fact that you had stared over that kind of cliff that most people don't have to at this age? Or was it just that was just your life, and you, like everybody else, there's good bits, there's bad bits, and everything in between?
I wasn't. I think possibly Rosie had in the back of her mind. It was always there.
Yeah.
Is it going to come back? And looking back now, I'm sure she had those thoughts quite often. We never really talked about that, not very often anyway. I think my attitude is quite different. I don't really tend to dwell on things.
Worry about what you need to at the time.
Yeah, you deal with stuff as it comes, and that's just wing it. But so looking back now, those few years were precious, and maybe we could have done more to maximise it. But
I don't know. I think
hindsight's
pond dipping in the
wonderful, isn't it?
rain is pretty special. I think we as parents, we think the things they remember have to be these really kind of the trips to Disney or the
Mm.
the parties and that sort of stuff. Whereas I genuinely think that I can remember going pond dipping with my gran, taking a jam jar, and those are the things that have stuck with me. And I think actually, yeah, those are the big things. It's just the time with them, and just the time. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, Rosie didn't really get enough with her boys, did she?
No, she didn't. So then we got through to 2021, and throughout the summer of 2021, I think her energy levels just seemed to dip. She knew that something was going on, and now I kind of had a more positive attitude about it. I was trying to be, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's nothing. And
Yeah.
we were on holiday in we were in Cornwall, a little holiday let. It was the four of us. We had our dogs. We had 3 dogs at that point.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, there's a story with the dogs, but I'll probably go into that. And just she was always generally an early riser. She'd get out of bed and she'd be ready for the day, and we'd do stuff. And she was the one who kind of got us all moving. She'd be all right. Come on, we're going here, and we're doing this, and she'd plan stuff and she'd organise stuff, and we kind of get to like 10 o'clock, and she was just kind of still in bed, and it just felt like something wasn't right. And she knew it. Not long after that was when she had a terminal diagnosis. It was back. Cancer was back. It was secondary. It was. She had a cough for a little while as well, ongoing. She had some back pain, but it was all small things that kind of, when you put the signs together, and then you actually convince someone to do a full scan, MRI or whatever they do. So she was back. She had tumours in her lungs. She had multiple tumours in her liver. Was in different parts of her liver, so it was inoperable because they'd said she had to take the whole thing. And they also found some tumours in her spine. So it was everywhere. It was.
I'm so sorry. So she must have just felt like she was under attack, like it's swarming on her.
Yeah, it was, and it was the fact that it was everywhere. It wasn't like I've got another lump on my breast, and we can deal with it. It wasn't, well, it's secondary, but there's a tumor on my lungs, we can deal with that. But it was, anyways, it was everywhere, and it was spreading, and it was clearly those were the tumors that were obvious. Those were the shadows that come up on the scans, but we knew that it would have been in lots of other places, which it was, and as we kind of went further down that road, it was, she had tumors in her brain. So she started treatment. Would have been September time, 2021. Started on chemotherapy, and they start you on fairly lightweight drugs. I think if that's the right word. And then as that stops working, or if it doesn't have any effect, and it just becomes more and more aggressive as you go through that thing. But she didn't want anyone to know.
Okay.
Like, she didn't tell anyone for a long time. She told, obviously I knew, she told one friend. She didn't tell her parents for a while. Didn't tell any of my family, because she knew that people's attitudes and the way people talk to you changes, and it did change.
And once they know, you can't take it back, can you?
Exactly. No, exactly. And she didn't want boys to know until they needed to know.
Right.
That makes sense.
Did the boys know that she'd had cancer? Did you talk about that openly as a family?
Yeah, they did. So Walt, Walt doesn't necessarily remember it, but he knew that she'd been ill and she knew it had been cancer.
Yeah.
Rex, not so much. He was quite young. He would have been 5 at that point.
Same age as Hector when his dad died.
Yeah. So they knew that she was ill. We told them that she wasn't very well. We told them that she's having some treatment. Didn't tell them that she's going to be okay because we knew she wasn't. But we didn't tell them exactly what was going on because we wanted them to just kind of not have the weight of that on them. They're still young; they didn't need it.
Yeah. My story is very different, but I can remember that moment, or the hours between me knowing and telling my boys, because my daughter was too young to understand. And it's like a condensed version of this. It's let them have as much normality as possible before I shatter their world. And that you're going to do it at some point. But I think in many ways you're right. It's as long as while she was able to be physically present, then the boys, they don't need to know at that point. I think preserving their innocence is quite important for as long as we possibly can, because once they know, like I said, there's no going back, is there?
No, there's none. No, there's not. And where we live, everyone knows everyone, and everyone talks to everyone, and at the school gate, and they're all chatting. And if she knew that, if a few people knew, then everybody would know, and if everybody knows, then the boys might overhear something, or someone might say something at school, and then Fish didn't tell them. So the only surefire way is to just keep it quiet, and so that's what we did.
Now, and I don't mean to sound like I'm being disrespectful to Rosie, because I'm absolutely not. I understand her reasons for this, of course I do, but I'm talking to you here, and I'm just wondering what the impact of that was like on you, because if you can't share what's going on, that can be quite I guess isolating is the word I'm thinking of. So who were you able to lean on throughout this?
Yeah, it was difficult. No, I'm not going to lie. It was hard, but I fully understood why.
And I do as well.
Yeah,
but I'm thinking of you in this.
We just had to get through it. No, again, I didn't tell anyone for probably a couple of months. I told my work because I was going to be in and out. They knew the people I work with, but other than that, I didn't really tell anyone. Didn't really talk to anyone about it at all.
And what about Rosie? Was she able to? So I'm really just throwing questions at you here. You can tell me to pack it in if you want. I've never lived through this, so this is why I'm interested, and I'm interested in how humans deal with adversity, and I'm just wondering how accepting she was of this terminal diagnosis. Because as a mum, the thought of being told I wasn't going to see my kids grow up, like any parent, it's the most terrifying thing. And I know that in these circumstances, some people will engage and they want to talk about the future. They'll write letters. They'll go, and other people will shut down. And I'm just wondering whether she fell into either of those camps.
No, she did engage. She engaged with it fully. I mean, towards the end, she did all of those things. She wrote letters to people. She did memory boxes for the boys, and bought stuff for the house that dotted around the house, and
left her mark.
Yeah, exactly. So the obviously as the treatment gets more and more aggressive, we got towards the end of 2021, and then the chemotherapy that she was on has kind of stopped working, and so they're going to try another one, and that's when moved on to, because the one she'd been taking had just been an oral tablet essentially. So then we moved into the slightly more aggressive. It was an IV. It was going round. She was going to lose her hair, and that was it's the mark of cancer, isn't it? The headscarf or whatever, and that was the point where it would be obvious, and so we kind of had to tell people, or she told a few people, and then the word spread.
And you're right.
At this point, she told her family. I told my family. I've got 3 older sisters, so they knew. I had a few friends, but the circle kind of widened at that point and when we were out. So,
And it is quite it is like being marked, branded, isn't it? Because it is I've never heard it described as the sign of cancer, and actually, you're right, it is. And there are there are elements of losing your femininity, losing, stopping looking like who you are. It's cancer just seems to steal everything from you,
yeah, it does. It
and
does. It's horrible, and I think losing your hair for someone like Rosie, for any young or girl, lady, woman, whatever word is the most
person.
appropriate person, young
Let's play it
person,
safe.
it's a huge deal. It's massive. It changes how you look. It changes how you feel. It affects you wanting to go and do stuff and go places because everybody looks at you, and they do.
Yeah.
And they'll, for not in a bad way, and maybe there's some question marks, or maybe they're just curious, or maybe there's some
And I think
sympathy,
sometimes
but it just
sympathetic,
affects
yeah.
things. Yeah, exactly. And I do
Yeah.
it. I see people. I've seen a family. Last summer me and the boys, we did a night in a hotel, and there was a youngish family there, and the mum had a headscarf on, and I just thought, well, Jesus, you know,
Mm.
it just affects how you interact with people because it's
Yeah.
there at the back of your mind. There's that question you don't know, and yeah, it's a stigma, I suppose.
And for
And some
somebody
people
who's
wear it. Some people wear it with pride and they embrace it and they go for it. And this is me, and this is how I am. But that wasn't Rosie's issue.
and that's why I asked, how she felt about the end of life experience, because it's everybody responds differently. And you're right, some people will wear their bald heads with, almost a
Mm.
badge of honor. I'm going to war here. This is my armor. And other people feel very vulnerable because, like you say, there's no hiding from it. And it's a very distinctive lack of hair as well, isn't it? So it's not like she's made a fashion statement and shaved
Yeah,
her head. It's
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so, Free, you got the terminal diagnosis in, where am I looking here? 2021. So the other thing
yeah.
is, I'm thinking anytime anybody says anything 2020 or 2021, I'm thinking, how was your access to services during this point? Did you face delays?
No, not massive. It didn't massively impact things. The only real impact I had was the fact that she had to go into everything on her own.
Yeah.
I couldn't go in. The first time round, I went into the cancer ward and I was there when she's having chemo. This time round, it was, she'd
Yeah.
get out of the car at the door, and then she'd have to then find her way back out to the car, feeling like absolute shit,
I
to be
bet that was
picked
tough
up.
watching her
So,
walk in on her own. I bet that
yeah.
was, it's made me go,
Um,
goosebumpy.
so that was the only real impact I had because we were all kind of coming out of the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a huge deal. And um, to credit to the NHS, I mean, they did allow me to go into some of the consultations, appointments, oncology consultations. I just went anyway. We asked and they said, yeah, okay, if you have to, and I just went.
Now, on that subject, and this is a bit of a sticky question, but it's, again, what we're doing here is we're shining a light and we're opening up this world because people don't know. And I'm
Mm.
going to ask you, don't have to answer, is how did they tell you that it was game over? How did they have that conversation with you both?
Um, so Rosie, she knew, she just knew. So she went for a scan. They did the scan, and she kind of, I think, she read the face of the person who was seeing her. Then I think a bit of experience comes into it as well. Um, there was a period of time, it was just over a week, when she hadn't heard anything post scan. And she said to me, I know it's not good because it's been this length of time. I was like, well, what? I said, what are you on about? What do you mean? She said that if it was okay, they would have told me straight away. If it was bad, if they'd found stuff, it would then go to the panel with the consultant, would look at it, they discuss it, and they come up with a treatment plan. And they meet probably every 4 days or something like that. I think she was saying she kind of knew the ins and outs of it. And so she said, because this period of time has passed, I know things are bad. And she was right. She had a phone call for an appointment to go in to see her oncologist. And then so she immediately then said, I don't want to wait. I don't want to come and see you in 4 days' time. Can you just get her to ring me now? So she had a phone call, and Rose was very upfront with her oncologist. She kind of said exactly what she thought. She said how it was, and so they did it over the phone.
Were you there?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was at work. She rang me. She told me, and I just kind of down tools and left. Yeah. So, and but she knew, but she knew before that just from how she was feeling and her previous experience, I suppose.
I'm really sorry. I know it's a trite and an overused saying, but I am really sorry. But it feels very cruel. And how did you tell the boys?
Ooh, that's
Right in for the jugular there.
That's the one, isn't it? Those are those conversations. Those awful.
No, so I just slipped it in. How did you tell the boys?
So we kind of did it in a couple of stages. We told them that her cancer was back, that she was having some treatment, and then almost kind of left it at that. In a way, didn't
bit
tell
vague.
them. Yeah, a little bit vague. And then we got to beginning of summer 2022 when she stopped treatment. And that was the point at which we had to.
It's okay. Do you want me to move on?
No, it's fine.
I
that's
know
when we had. That's when we had to have that conversation. The one you just don't ever want to have.
No, do you know the hairs on my arms have all gone up? I can go back into doing that, having that conversation myself. And it is the worst conversation you'll ever have to have.
It's the worst, isn't it? It's that one you just. So we, I can remember exactly. We sat down in the lounge. I guess I know it's kind of funny in a way. There is a jokey element to it, which
Good.
is, So we talked about how we're going to do it. We obviously, me and Rosie said, you read all the stuff and how you have to use clear language and all that kind of stuff. No, obviously, shitting yourself, don't want to do it. So we started.
And you don't want to fuck it up either, do you?
No, exactly. Yeah. So we started this conversation with the boys, and it went away. And then I thought to myself, I feel like we're beating around the bush a little bit here. We're not being direct. And so I just said, I think my words were something like, the tumour's not working, Mummy's going to die.
We shouldn't laugh. Didn't we laugh? Because otherwise we'll just cry. Oh my God. What are they, just like deer in headlights?
But, and no, they weren't though, that's the thing. And they got pretty upset and they cried and then I think Rosie made a joke or something and then we all kind of had a hug. And then I was talking to Walt very, very shortly after, probably minutes afterwards. And he said, so Walt would have been, he was 12. So he would have said to me, I knew she was going to die. I could tell.
Wow.
I know about cancer from school. I've worked it out. He said, I was wondering if she was going to die before Amber, who was one of our dogs, one of our really elderly dogs, and he'd been having that internally.
Poor little thing.
But Walt, he internalizes everything. He doesn't talk about anything. He won't. He hadn't said that to anyone. He hadn't mentioning it to anyone, but he's 12 years old to be having those thoughts. Yeah. So at that point, when I said we had 3 dogs, at that point we were down to 2. We had 2 Springer Spaniels, which we got when we were before children. So the third dog was an early replacement for the one that was reaching the end of his life, but he hung on for another year, so hence we had 3 dogs for a period of time.
And who did die first, Rosie or Amber the dog?
Rosie died first. Yeah.
Small victory, first. I suppose.
Well, answer that question.
And so I have a child that internalises a lot, and we a well-meaning guest said to him early on, you're the man of the house now, you need to look after your mum, and it's things like that he was internalising and not showing his emotions. He didn't want to show me. And it's quite it still surprises me now actually how much kids pick up on and are aware of, and a lot of what we do is to protect them, and but it's getting that out. It's trying to get the information out of them, because they'll sit and think about things, but they won't tell you. It's you sort of want to just, when they're little tiny and they'll just tell you everything that comes out their heads, you sort of want that again.
Yeah, I mean that made me that conversation with Walt made me think that we had left it too long before we dropped that massive bombshell on them. But that's the only thing that I think we didn't quite do it right in terms of how we told the kids.
And also, let's
we
be
left
honest,
it a little bit too long. But
had either of you ever done this before?
No,
you're dealing with the complete unknown, and your hearts are breaking. I think the fact that you were able to keep those boys safe and loved, and that nothing we do as parents is perfect, and grieving parents, I fucked up a lot, and they seem all right. Come back to me when they're fully teenage, but they seem all right. Yeah. Probably. So then the thing is, you don't know what is caused by grief and what would have just been children anyway. It's very difficult. Now this is the summer, and Rosie died in the September, so I'm guessing that was quite a tough summer, September 22 for you guys.
Yeah, it was. So she had tumors in her in behind her stomach, which were growing and causing her quite a lot of fluid buildup. So she had this massive swelling. I mean, she was bigger that summer. She was bigger than she was when she had Rex.
Must have been so uncomfortable.
She was skin and bone, lost all her weight, and this massive kind of almost like a pregnancy belly. There was just fluid that was being got to the point where they were coming and draining every 2 days. We had district nurses in and out of the house every couple of days. It was difficult. It was a really, really challenging time. She slowly, her condition just deteriorated. I say slowly, over kind of 2 months. Just went from her being able to move around and go out and do stuff, albeit for short periods of time. She'd go and do something. We'd go out for an hour or so, and she'd be wiped out. But and then it kind of reached a point where she struggled to walk from the room that she was sleeping in downstairs to the downstairs bathroom, without help. So she moved into a room downstairs with a hospital bed, and she spent a lot of time in there on her own. She didn't really want people coming and going all the time. She was very methodical in how she dealt with that period. She had a really close group of friends that she'd been friends with since school. There's about 7 or 8 of them, and a whole list of other people. And she knew what she was doing at the time. They didn't have a clue. She methodically saw each and every one of them once, and only once, and they didn't know that was her.
That was goodbye.
Yeah, she wanted to. Yeah, she wanted to see these people. She wanted to spent some time with them, but she didn't want them to know. She didn't want them to know that it was going to be, the big goodbye or whatever. I know some people embrace it and they have, house full of family and party atmosphere and whatever, but that wasn't how she was. It wasn't how she wanted to do it, and it was her. It was her decision. It was her call. It was, it was what she wanted to do, and that was.
And actually, in a point in her life where almost all control has been stripped from her by this horrible disease, to have some control over how you manage your end and how you see people, I think that is very important. Did she go into hospice at all?
Yeah. So she, towards the end of August and then into beginning of September, she was really, really struggling. Walt, a little bit of backstory. So Walt has dyspraxia and slow processing speed. So Walt was at an independent school because he needs the small class sizes and the IT and that kind of stuff for his support. We made the decision to move Rex to the same school, which is an independent school. It's not a special needs school. It's just an independent school that would suit him. So
he's in an independent school that's got it has all sorts of children in it. It's a lovely, lovely school.
Yes, so it's probably really, really similar kind of environment. So we made the decision to move Rex to that school. That's September. It was a fairly last minute call. We pulled him out. He finished year 1, pulled him out of there to start year 2 in this other school. Rosie set herself a goal. I know they like, because obviously it's quite a psychological factor, isn't it? So one of her goals was to see Rex, see the boys back to school. So Rex starts school, that was to, that kind of, I think that was what got her through the summer, was this goal that the palliative units had told her, set yourself a goal, whatever. So we got to that point, beginning of September, and then she very rapidly declined. We'd originally said that she went to die at home, and then we kind of realised that was not going to be possible. Not going to be very nice for the boys either. That whole little period after she died, when her body's in the house, and what do you do? And then how do you feel about the house? And how do you feel about the room she died in? And
it's a huge responsibility, because often cancer patients are in a lot of pain at the end as well, and you won't have at least in a hospice, they can administer pain relief, they can actually offer support to you as a family. Because I know John's late wife, so she wanted to die at home, and as it got closer and closer, they realised that it wasn't going to be feasible. He couldn't keep on top of the pain. It was very distressing for Holly. So I think we all have an idea of what we think we would want to do in that circumstance, but actually you have to be guided by the medics, by how you're feeling, and about the children, because you're right. How I often think about, well, I don't often think about it, I'm not a weirdo, but what it must be, like, somebody has died and then you're sort of like, okay, what now? Whereas at least in a hospice or hospital, it's taken that side of it is taken care of.
Yeah. So she went. So Rosie, her condition deteriorated. I think the real crunch point was when I was sleeping upstairs. She was sleeping downstairs in the front room, hospital bed and stuff. And she got up in the night, got herself to the toilet very slowly, and then she couldn't get back up off the toilet. She tried to ring me. My phone was on Do Not Disturb. And I'm upstairs. But she eventually managed to get herself back to bed. But that's when we kind of realised, it's too much. I was doing as much as I could, but when you're having to help someone, if they just want to turn over in bed, it just wasn't going to work.
No, there's a reason why the hospices exist, and it's because it's bloody hard. And no matter how much you love somebody and how much you want to be able to care for them, we're not medics.
Exactly.
And even if you are a medic, it's different if it's your own person. Sorry, can't carry on.
Thankfully, she wasn't really in a great deal of pain. It was mostly discomfort from the swelling and other bits. She wasn't in major pain, so she wasn't on really heavy duty
And does that mean that she
pain
was able to be a
medication.
bit more kind of with it, for want of a better term?
Yes, she was. She was a little bit with it, but she was also faking it. I called her out on it at one point. She so she kind of almost she put on a front of when she saw someone, and even the palliative nurses. There was a point where the main lady that we used to come once a week to talk about things and make plans and all that kind of stuff. It's just only probably about 3 or 4 weeks before Rosie died. Carol came into the house and Rosie was up, dressed, in the kitchen, walking around, making a cup of tea, and it gives this impression that you're okay. I was like, this isn't
reality.
this isn't reality. This is a front. You'll do this. You'll put all your energy and all your effort into appearing to be okay, and then you're wiped out for the rest of the day. We won't see you for 20 hours because you've used all your energy. It frustrated me a little bit. You're creating this appearance which is unnecessary, but we're here all the time. It was challenging.
And were you able to have conversations about what she wanted to happen with her body in terms of, cremation or burial?
She planned everything.
She planned everything.
Oh yeah.
Did she choose a song at her funeral? I'm always interested to know what people had.
So she chose her burial plot. She chose the whole service. She met the guy who's going to do the service. He came to the house. She sat down, had a conversation with him, planned the whole thing. It was all mapped out. They were to and from in emails. This was stuff that she was in control of, and that she.
This is exactly what I've written down here. Is that feeling of control?
Yeah, while you're lying in bed, she closed all the bank accounts. She cancelled all direct debits. She transferred everything that was in her name out of her name, put into my name. All of that stuff, which, I'm sure a sudden death, the situation must be probably 50 times worse, because a lot of that shitty admin, when you have to ring 100 different people and tell them that your wife's just died.
Tell you what makes it extra fun. Nobody. If you want to throw in a real curveball, that makes it that adds an extra level of excitement.
Yeah, well, we think they're dead. Yeah.
Yes, I think he's dead, but I have no death certificate. Can I have some life insurance?
Yeah.
No.
So she was in control and she could deal with that stuff.
And was she like that in her everyday life? Was she? And I'm not saying control freak at all, but I like to have control. I like things to be just so. I'll say it's Holly's birthday next week. Like, can you plan this party? I've done the other 3 parties, and then I'll be like, I've just ordered this for the party. I've just done the party bag. So I like to have
exactly like that. Yeah. Ask you to do something. Could you?
And then do it. Do it anyway. Yeah.
And then do it anyway. Like, well.
And was the funeral as she planned, as she hoped?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, yeah. It was pretty much. She even chose what food was going to be served.
Did she?
Yeah. So,
and did you take the boys?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I took mine. But some people do, some people don't. I think again, it's incredibly personal preference. But for me, it was more the lack of body and not having that horrible web closure. So I felt that the boys, particularly Tabs was in my arms, but the boys needed to be there, and I think to be surrounded by Ben's friends and family, I felt it was important. But I also know that lots of people don't want them there because they think it's too challenging for a child. So I'm just curious, really. And how
So we've got a group of friends that live locally, and they're all from when Walt was at first school. So each one had essentially their oldest child is the same age as Walt, and they've all got younger siblings. And so all of those friends, they all came, and all of the kids came. There was a nice sunny afternoon in September, and the kids, it was a beautiful it's a woodland burial ground with this kind of purpose-built facility, and all the kids were just running around playing outside.
Yeah.
It So, it was kind of nice in a way.
Do you know what? This is so weird that you said that, because it was Ben's birthday yesterday, day before yesterday. Oh my God, they blur. Wednesday. When was Wednesday? Day before yesterday. And I took the kids up to the church, because we're not religious, but we had a church service. I didn't really know what else to do. And there's a very nice pub, which I booked for mine and Ben's 10-year wedding anniversary. And I actually held the memorial there instead. And we were there, and I was reminiscing. I was sort of saying to Monty, the eldest, how do you remember anything? And he's like, oh, well, I remember the rocket firework getting let off on the church roof. And it was like that. There was a lot of drink. There was laughter, and I didn't expect to hear laughter. But I think you realise the importance of making it. So, sorry, I'm digressing here, one of my tangents. But Mum would say to me, right, I've had some friends ask, do you want people in black? And I sort of say, yeah, I do. I want people in black. There's no colours, there's no celebration. This is a funeral. Like, we are grieving. But actually, when it came to it, you almost couldn't help yourself kind of get swept up in that, I don't know, the love, for want of a better word, because everybody was there because either they loved him or they loved me or they loved both of us. And he would have been 50 next year. And I think maybe I would recreate something, maybe at home, just do a barbecue, invite some of his uni friends, because it was so sad because it was his funeral. But the feeling of being around people that knew him was so special. And I want to hold on to that and perhaps recreate it. But I think it is confusing, because sometimes a funeral feels like a party. And
yeah, it does. I guess the traditional funeral is a somber affair, isn't it? But
and then the wake
it was
afterwards.
but then it's more of a celebration of life kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
She wants people
involve the kids?
she wants people to wear bright colours. It was no black. It was.
And I've been to
it was what
funerals
she
where
wanted.
people have worn colours, and it's been lovely. But I think I was so angry and mad at the world that I wanted everybody in black. But again, it is so personal preference. I don't know if you've listened to one of my guests. His husband was brought to school. He wasn't brought to school. He was brought, oh God, he was brought to the crematorium. But in the Ghostbusters car with the Ghostbusters theme playing. People do some really cool stuff because there's nothing else you can do for them than give them a send off that fits.
And I think because she planned it herself, then she was able to kind of express her preferences, which was she picked thick music. She picked some. She used to dance, so she always danced through childhood and in childhood. So she did ballet for quite a long time as an adult. So she chose a ballet tune. Well,
that would have got me.
Not my thing. To as everyone was coming in, and it was how hopefully it was how she wanted it to be. Obviously, we'll never know.
So I've sort of whistle stopped you through the most horrendous time of your life, and I guess I'm just kind of interested to know what life looks like now, because I mentioned at the beginning it is different for a bloke. It is. Like, you don't. It sounds like you've got quite a supportive group of friends, but often what you find is a bloke on his own with kids. They don't get invited to things. I think perhaps boys, maybe it's slightly different, but I'm thinking of John with Holly. Little girls don't tend to go around to have play dates at houses where it's just a single guy. And this, even just the talking, like the way I talk to my friends at the school gate, it's very, you don't ask me how I am unless you want the real answer. And I'm just thinking, as a man in this world, you might be about to tell me completely different, but my suspicion is that there isn't the same sort of network and support and kind of camaraderie and that village feeling. But please do correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. I think it is different. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to do this, is because, like you said at the beginning, most of your guests are female, and I think it comes down to we don't talk, do we? And I'm the same. I went through a long period of not going there, not engaging with my feelings and discussing and having those open conversations. I had some counselling.
I was just going to ask about counselling.
Yeah, I did. I did probably nearly a year of regularly talking to someone, and it helped massively. I hit a real low point spring last year. It came out, Christmas was fucking horrible.
Yeah. And it's that the magnitude of it hits, I think. Hearing you say that you felt quite low the following spring is very familiar, because I do think you get to that sort of 6-month point. A lot of the support wanes. It's no longer the new piece of news in the village. People's lives have carried on. Often you look at the children and just think, well, why aren't you more upset? And it's not like you want them to be, but you feel like you're the only one carrying this grief burden. So I think I too, around 6 months, hit a bit of a low. I've dipped back in and out of that low quite regularly over the last 6 years, but I do think the reality of it hitting, because in the maelstrom that is the planning the funeral, people bring wine round, making sure the kids got to school, all you sort of get lost, I think, in those first 6 months, and then the reality that it's just you now, and that's really daunting. And people look at the kids looking at you for the answers, and it is tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, it is.
And how about now? How are you feeling now?
Yeah,
Sorry, you go.
no, yeah, generally okay-ish now. I think, see, when immediately after Rosie died, you're in that kind of whirlwind of not knowing which way is up, and then we got to Christmas, which was crap, and then springtime, and normally spring's kind of filled with like hope and optimism.
Hope.
Yeah, and it just wasn't there, and I knew I needed to do something to shift it. I couldn't get myself out of this rut. I was back at work. I wasn't working full time, but I was working 3 days a week, and just I dropped the kids when I wasn't working. I dropped the kids off at school, and I come home, and the next thing I knew, it was time to go and pick them up. I've got no idea what I did during those days, and I'm pretty sure I just sat in a chair and looked at my dad and
Stared at a wall.
Yeah, for a long time. And I think talking helped a lot. My counsellor, she suggested I watched a TED talk. It was really interesting. It was about men and vulnerability, and the perception of vulnerability among men. How a guy would generally see vulnerability as a weakness. But it's not, is it? Vulnerability is a strength. If you open yourself up and you allow that to happen, it's not a weakness. No one's ever going to go, oh, look at him, he's crying.
Would you send me a link to that?
Sorry?
Would you send me a link to that TED Talk?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, just really, be quite interesting to put it into the show notes as well.
Definitely. There's two of them. There's two talks by quite a well-known psychoanalyst or psychotherapist. She's quite American, but it's super interesting, and it's on a male perspective. And I find just the words that she said, I found them were super. I actually had a conversation with a couple of guys at the pub about it, and we all kind of opened up. We used it as a way to kind
this of. This is sweet.
It was just quite cool.
I like that. Yeah. See, you're spreading your sunshine here. You're getting your friends to open up. They're all going to be cracking open like Pandora's box. There'll be all sorts of things in here. Be all your fault. And I know that I've asked you quite a lot about the boys. I don't want to pry too much, but how are they now? I know it's a tough question because their mum is still dead, but yeah, how are they coping?
I don't think it's a question that you can actually answer knowingly. Like I said, Walt has his challenges. His additional needs mean that he can't verbalize his emotions. He just can't do it. Have you ever seen those cushions, the emotions wheel? Yes, I've got a cushion with the emotions wheel. And there's one point where he was super upset about something, and he couldn't speak, couldn't find any words. And I held this cushion. I was like, "Can you just point? Can you just point to a word? I'm gonna guess it's not happy." And he just couldn't do it. So he
couldn't identify what he was feeling in order to tell you, oh, the poor little thing.
Couldn't do it. He's okay. He started new school this September because he's gone into year 9. So he started senior school, which was a process in itself to get him into a school. I think he's generally okay. He's talking to a counsellor at school. There's a school counsellor.
Yeah.
sees them fairly regularly. Rex is very different. He gets quite sad. He gets quite down. He went through a little period where I think he was really quite down, probably this Christmas, beginning of this year. But Rex is more aware, even though he's 6 years younger.
Yeah.
He's more aware of his emotions and how things are impacting him, which is kind of good because he's got to go through it. Unfortunately, you can't.
It's like the bear hunt. You can't go around, can't go over it, can't go under it.
And it's so hard because there's nothing you can do to make it better. You just can't. So it was his birthday.
You just got to stand and hold their hands as they walk through it. And
his birthday on Monday, and it started off really well, and he had a good day, and then he just got quieter and quieter as they went on, and got to bedtime, and he just dissolved.
But I know it is really good that he's crying. That's really good. It doesn't feel good, but it is good.
Yeah, we talked about it, and we came to the conclusion that it's just not the same.
No, and nothing is ever going to be the same. And that is, I think, accepting that I was going to be sad for the rest of my life took some real work, because I'm quite naturally, I have bouts of depression, I have bouts of low moods. The ADHD causes me to spiral sometimes, but on the whole, I'm quite an upbeat, positive person. I believe good things happen to good people, and to accept that a terrible thing could happen to a good person, and that was going to stick with me forever. I couldn't outdrink it. I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't anything it. I think that's a really hard thing to accept. But as time goes on, I guess it's just a part of who I am now. There's everything is. I can be very happy, but I can also be sad at the same time. But that's a tough concept for me at 43. It's a tough concept for a small child. And it's just horrible. We talk about the kids a lot because every Disney film, every book, it's the main protagonist will generally lose a parent, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you think, well, this has actually happened to my kid, and this is being used as entertainment. And you feel, I took it all quite personally at first. I'm a little bit less angry with the world now, but there's, and I know that these kids are going to take some healing. It doesn't go away. And I think from in the brief time I have spent with you today, I think that they're in good hands. It sounds like you are a really good dad. And I can see behind you your blackboard with I can't see what's on it, but I can see that you've got your schedule. And I'm in the studio, but in my kitchen, I've got one twice that size. And it's, I don't know if anybody gets this reference, but do you remember when Vanessa Feltz went nuts in the Big Brother house and started writing on the walls and things? Nobody remembers this reference. I call it when I go, and that's when everything just gets vomited onto this board. But without my blackboard, nothing happens. Blackboard and timers. So I don't like to talk down to you and sort of be patronising, but from one parent to another, it does sound like you are doing absolutely everything you can for those boys and for yourself, because sometimes it's easy to get bogged down in looking after the kids and forget that we need a bit of support too.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like going back to your point earlier on about how a playground is probably different for mums than it is to guys. Yeah, it is, and it does feel slightly awkward sometimes. I find, like trying to organise a play day or a party or whatever,
and you end up texting women. Yeah,
exactly. I have to kind of generate these. I'm the only guy in the school,
school WhatsApp. Yeah.
But, yeah, and you've got to kind of, I guess, find that balance. But they all know, all the parents know the situation. They know that Rosie died. Lots of them never met her because Rex started that school 3 weeks before she died. She never took him to the school gate. The school knew Rosie because Walt was already there. So the school knew us as a family, and the school were amazing. But that Rex's year group, only some of them knew her. Because he did a little bit of preschool there, and then he moved into a mainstream. But so some of them, the ones that have been there for a long time, knew him, but most of them don't. But, we're kind of muddling our way through and just mostly winging it. Yeah.
Well, are you going to bring them to Woodstock? You absolutely should. I'll send you a link. So we're doing a festival here in West Malling in the summer, 31st of August.
Is that 30th?
Oh, yes. Do you know what? They're booking it on a bank holiday. But I think I'm going to do more things like this. I want to do more stuff include the kids and just kind of create a proper bit of a community around this, because there's something here, there's some magic here in this podcast and the people that come on. And I talk to them, I'm like, I don't want to let you guys go. I want to make an opportunity for us to meet up. And I'm just thinking, you talk about Walt, and I get on so well with Monty. So hopefully we'll do some other things, and perhaps we can get you out and get and meet the boys. But
it's hard I find it quite difficult to engage with some of those things, because it's almost like you're ramming it down their throat.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be this is not going to be, this is just going to be a festival, and it's going to be just fun. It's just called Woodstock. There's no grief workshops, there's no sad stuff, there's bands, popcorn, burgers, ice creams, I like festivals a lot. I like festival, and I'm sort of trying to create a little mini festival in a day festival. So, but funnily enough, there's a poster in my bedroom, in my living room window, and I was in the bedroom and I had some people go past and they're like, oh, I wonder if that's just for widows. I'm like, I've got to put a label on it saying you don't have to kill your spouse, you can still come. Anyway, on that note, I think I've probably taken enough from your soul for one interview. And I am really grateful, because you took all those questions like an absolute champ. You didn't shy away from anything. So I am extremely grateful for your candor and your honesty.
No, thank you. I actually I was hoping it'd be fairly cathartic to.
I think it is. You might feel a bit wonky after.
Yeah.
People do. I get quite cold afterwards, because I think it's everything you're hearing about. It's relevant to our own experiences as well, and but everybody, I think, and I've got a little bit of a kind of a private, I just tally in that everybody that's come on has said thank you and how much they've enjoyed it, and that's what I want. I don't want anybody to walk away from this and be like, oh my god, I felt like I was interrogated. That's not what it's meant to be. It's just I'm genuinely interested in people, and I'm particularly interested in people who've gone through shit stuff and come out the other side. So thank you for being part of my tribe and joining us. And I fully expect we'll get quite a lot of feedback on this one, because male voices are just not as heard out there as female.
Yeah, good. Hopefully. I mean, I found quite a lot of benefit from hearing all of the stories that I listened to, but in particular some of the male voices. Like you said, there just seems to be. I think there is less of us. For whatever reason, probably because blokes are stupider and are younger.
Well, you notice there's a lot more sudden deaths for men, put it that way.
So there's less of us. So there's, and I think we're less willing to engage with these kind of things.
And I think people think it's more, it's a bit vain, who wants to hear about me, and you can almost get kind of impostery about it. But I mean, I did not think that we'd be looking. I mean, we must be up to 70,000 downloads now, and that maybe people want to hear it. So there's as long as people want to listen, and as long as people want to tell their stories, I'll be here behind the mic.
Brilliant.
So thank you for coming on today, and thank you to our listeners. If any of you have been affected, or if there's any men out there that would like to make contact with us, you can reach me on the Instagram or our website, and I can certainly pass on any messages to Geraint. Did I say that right? Yes. Avoided saying it most of the interview, you notice. But thank you ever so much, and keep on keeping on out there, and I will be back with you in 2 weeks with another episode. Lots of love. Hello and welcome back. Geraint and I just finished the record and realised that we had neglected to talk about Rosie's actual death. So we're not sure whether we sort of subconsciously skirted around it or not, but either or, we are back, and I'm going to hand over the microphone to you, and you're going to, it's horrible, isn't it, just to say, right, you're back. Now, could you just take me back to when your wife died, please?
Let's go back to those worst moments. Yeah.
Off you go.
Right. So I think we got to September, Rex started school, Rex started the new school, and then Rosie's condition, she'd met her goal. Her goal was to see the boys back to school, and that goal, and the palliative nurse, Rosie told me this right at the end. The palliative nurse told her to set herself a new goal. So she did set herself a new goal. Her condition deteriorated massively. We realised that it wasn't going to work, her being at home, and so made the decision that she would move into hospice. The dates are a little bit muddled. Brain doesn't really kind of work on that. I think Rosie
Widow
died.
brain.
Rosie died on 23rd of September. She went into hospice around about the 20th, 21st. She was only there for a couple of days. her new goal that she set herself at the beginning of that week on the Monday was to be dead by the end of the week.
I kind of like the sound of Rosie.
Super cheery goal, but she'd had enough.
But that was, and I just think I can't relate to it. Of course I can't. I've never been in that situation. But to know that you're going to die anyway, and that all is left is prolonging the discomfort, the pain, the sadness, then I think I would probably feel the same.
No, I agree. I as horrible as it is and as hard as it was she'd reached the end of the road. She wasn't going to get better. We all knew that. We'd known that for a long time. We just don't want to prolong that kind of misery and suffering and feeling.
And it's a real shame among the cancer adjacent, which is a term I heard recently, because there is a relief when somebody dies from cancer or another debilitating disease, because the person, there's no coming back. There is no silver lining, no hope. And you're just delaying the inevitable. But people really struggle to say that and to say, yes, it was a relief when they died, because actually they were in so much pain. But almost, without doubt, that is how people feel, because if you love somebody, you don't want it. I mean, it's a terrible analogy. We use it a lot, but if your favourite pet is in pain, what do? You don't make it suffer because you want it to be around to be your pet. You have to almost suspend your own selfishness at this point and think about what's right for them. But that doesn't mean it's fucking easy.
No. So she went to hospice, made decision on in whatever day it was. Palliative nurse was in the house. We had a little chat about it. She made a phone call. There was a space in the hospice, which I think generally it's quite busy in there. There's not always a space. There happened to be a bed, so okay, let's do it. We decided that I would take her to the hospice and not have an ambulance come and get her, which was a bit of a mistake. So I packed her bag up and I said, do you want to say goodbye to the dog, Amber? We'd lost one at this point. So we're down to Amber and the stupid sausage dog man. So she walked into the kitchen. I helped her walk into the kitchen, and Amber came over. Amber was 14 at this point. She wasn't like a wild Springer Spaniel. She was super gentle anyway. She leant forward very slightly to touch Amber's head, stood back up, and she just fell backwards, smacked her head on the wall as she went down, and she made this noise. It's just hard to repeat, hard to kind of describe it. It was just confusion, and pain and horrible. And then I eventually got her to sit up. It was just me in the house on my own with her. Got to sit up. I managed to get her up on her feet, and somehow got her into the car. But at this point, she was she was obviously really, really unwell. It was very much the end of life, and the shock of falling over, it just really was just brutal, the impact that had. We got to the hospice. It was about a 10-minute drive. It's really not far. She couldn't get out of the car. It took 4 of us to get her out of the car into a wheelchair, to try and lift her and maneuver her into a wheelchair. And then kind of got her settled, but she couldn't settle. She was so much discomfort, she couldn't settle. I stayed with her for a bit. Her parents had been to visit her at home that morning, and that was the only time she'd asked to see her mum. She didn't have a super close relationship with her mum, and because she'd asked to see her mum, she wanted to see her mum kind of like latched onto that, and I understand that. I get it. You're child is dying. It's horrible, isn't it? But her mum kind of saw that as this green light to be there, and that wasn't what Rosie wanted. The mum was phoning the hospice and checking her, and can you say goodnight to her? And Rosie was like, can you not fucking wake me up in the night? Because my mum said goodnight. I don't want to know. I don't want to see her. I don't want to see anyone. I just didn't want anyone to come into the hospice. I think I was allowed.
You went anyway.
Well, anyway. Yeah, but she was there for three nights, 2 nights, 3 nights. I thought there was a few more days. I did speak to the doctors. I asked him, regarding the idea, kind of how long. He said
they love that question, don't they?
Yeah, but they do. This was it was a Thursday afternoon. He said I think it'd probably be till the weekend. So I went, picked the boys up from school, took them home, sorted them out. Boys went to bed. Rosie's close friend Jane, came round to the house so I could go back to the hospice. I was kind of sitting there with her, and she was reaching that stage at the end of cancer where you start to lose cognitive function. You lose track of time. The whole concept of time just disappears. It's like, what, I was there. She said, what are you still doing here? You need to pick the boys up from school. And it's like, it's 9:30 in the night now. They were at home. They were asleep in bed. Weirdly, I'd start to get this like slight tickly cough. Came out of nowhere. And she basically told me to fuck off because I don't want to get a cough. So,
in case it kills you.
Yeah, okay, can you leave? I don't want to get a cough. It'll kill me. Pretty much what she said. So I went home thinking probably, so I said, I'll see you in the morning kind of thing. My plan was to drop the boys from school and get back to hospice. And then at 5, it was about 5 o'clock Friday morning, my phone rang. I was already awake, which was not usual. I'd probably been awake for half an hour or so. And it was the hospice, and she had died. Very quietly, very peacefully, apparently. So I called her friend Jane again, who was also awake.
That's weird, isn't it?
It's really strange. And I went down to hospice. I saw her for a few minutes, gathered her stuff, collected a little cloth heart that Rex had. So the boys saw a pre-bereavement counsellor, and this counsellor, Rex just wouldn't engage with the counsellor. He physically would run away from her. When it was his turn to have a conversation, he'd be gone. He was like, where's Rex? Don't know, gone.
Sounds like heck.
So Walt had been given this pair of little cloth hearts. Rosie had one, he kept the other one. And the theory is he gets the other one back. The day, so on the Thursday, the counsellor being in school had seen Rex, and he had actually, looked at her. I don't think he spoke to her, but he looked at her.
Tolerated her presence.
So she gave him this pair of cloth hearts. And I hadn't had a chance to give the one to Rosie. So I took the heart, put it in her hand, so that she touched it, and then so at least that I could give it back to Rex, knowing that at least she had touched it. And then I came home. I had to wait for the boys to wake up to tell them that their mum had died.
Worst conversation in the world.
Yeah, it was the worst. I've heard you And people talk about the noise, the noise people make, which Rex made the noise. Either one.
Again, the bloody hairs on my arms. They go up because yes, I know, and they use the word haunting, and I didn't really know what haunting meant until I heard that noise because it haunts me. It does. I couldn't recreate it. I don't want to recreate it, but I can't get it.
You can't describe it and you can't recreate it. It's just something that comes. It's almost like
primal, isn't it?
From the soul, doesn't it? So Rex woke up first. I told him. We came downstairs, he had some breakfast, Walt was still asleep, and I was kind of waiting for Walt to then hear some noise. I wasn't going to wake him up and tell him his mum's died. I thought, let's wake up naturally. Kids are crazy, aren't they? It's like, one of the first things Rex said to me was, am I going to school today? Yeah. Well, probably not.
Yeah, but they are. They come up with some very, friends of sort of within hours. How do we get a new one? How do we get a new mum or a new dad? And you're like, all right, psychopath.
Yeah.
But it's...
Am I going to get a new mum?
Yeah. Like, give me a chance, mate. Not buried the first one yet.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, it's good to have it's good that we can still. But
yeah,
it is... Yeah. Do you think... I know this is, again, it's something that's often asked. Do you think that she perhaps waited until she was on her own to let go? Do you think she needed that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But no, she wanted to be on her own. She didn't want people around her. And she... I've heard other descriptions of end of life, but you almost need to relax. You need to be able to. The body needs to relax and let go. And she didn't want people around. I don't think she felt like she was able to reach that kind of relaxed state of mind with people around her.
From how you described her, I can see that, because she sounds like a woman that wanted to be in control, and it's the ultimate lack of control, this, isn't
it? Yeah. So Rex, when Rosie was at her kind of worst condition, Rex wouldn't look at her. He couldn't cope with her. He wouldn't look at her. He wouldn't talk to her. Walt, more so, he was a bit older. He was able to. He'd go and have a little jump and cuddle and stuff. But the boys only visited her in hospice once. I took them off to school the first day she moved in there. But that when Rex was in there that one time, he couldn't look at her. She tried to hold his hand, and she just kind of he just couldn't go there.
I guess that by this point she doesn't look like Mum much anymore.
No, she doesn't. No, she didn't look like Mum. She wasn't Mum, really. She didn't behave like Mum. She didn't look like Mum.
Smell like Mum.
Smell like Mum. It was, just the worst thing for a little boy to go through.
I'm so sorry. Sorry, I'm not gonna keep you too much longer, but do they talk, like, I'm thinking of Rex as the younger one, like, would he be quite open and talk? Because I know that my kids, Hector particularly, like, would just tell random people, oh, my dad died, like, just completely out of the blue, whereas Monty hasn't even told his classmates at school. It's funny how they choose to do different things with the information.
No, Rex, neither of them really talk about it at all. Neither of them will go there.
Just had a thought pop into my head as I do. So Hector, who is similar age to Rex, he's got he uses something called Mind Jam, which is an online platform. It's not therapy as such; it's mentoring. So they game, and it can be Fortnite, Minecraft, whatever. And they talk to. I mean, the concept of it sounds weird. My son games with a middle-aged man in his room on camera, but it's all very above board, and it's recognised by the Department for Education, so they can offer it support. We self-fund, but you can get it funded, and it's, for him, it's just been revolutionary, because if he wouldn't want to sit opposite a counsellor and talk to them, but it's that older thing, isn't it? Like, you talk to your parents when they're driving, they'll have their difficult conversations because they're distracted, and I think it's been really helpful for Hector and for children who struggle to access sort of more traditional forms of therapy. So I'll send you a link to it just in case it's something that might be helpful.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, actually Rex has quite recently got massively into Fortnite, so
Yeah. Do you know what? Hector's school rang me and I think, I just need to let you know that Hector's been paying for it. And I was like, I've kept it at bay till 11. Give me a chance, give me something. I prefer Minecraft. It seems less death related, but who knows? My boys, but they were playing a game with scuba divers within weeks. And I was just like, you guys are tapped. Like, this is weird, but whatever gets you through home. Well, I don't think we've forgotten anything else major, have we? We probably have. We can always meet again if necessary. But thank you, and I'm sorry that we sort of had to pull you back into that really, really tricky bit. But I'm glad we did in a weird way. I'm glad I got to hear that part of your story because it's a big bit of it, really.
No, it's good to complete the.
complete the picture. Well, I'll say goodbye again then. Thank you ever so much, and I no doubt will stay in touch. But yeah, everybody, I'm actually done now, so over and out for now. Bye bye.